Hey, I'm Brad Wetzler. Welcome to Writing with Heart, and I'm a writer, a teacher, and a writing coach and an editor as well. So, welcome to today's class. Today, I want to talk about what I call the magic formula, and the other name I have for it is the VAST method of narrative writing. And essentially, it's a little strategy I use to make sure that I'm writing with power and telling a good story. So this is really about kind of really finding your voice as a storyteller. And VAST is a acronym for these four different elements of telling a good story. And I'll just go through them one by one. V is for vulnerability, and so it's particularly as an important in personal writing, but it's also important in fiction and third person writing as well. But I'll start off talking about sort of personal, memoir writing, narrative writing. V for vulnerability. You want to create a voice as a narrator that is vulnerable. And what does that mean? Well, it means sharing, a rounded picture of who you are. We always have the task of creating ourselves, creating a character out of ourselves when we write in first person. And so you want to share, I guess, in a way that allows people to connect with you. And in a way we do that as human beings is we share some of our difficulties. We share our quirks. We share things that we're uncomfortable with about ourselves or even scared of about ourselves. So the idea is to be honest about ourselves, to talk about the good things, the things we like about ourselves, but also the things that we struggle with. So when we do that, we can find connection with others. It's not always about the deep, darkest secrets of ourselves. Sometimes there's like quirky things, the way we move through the world, the things we kind of notice about ourselves that other people find funny or weird or quirky. So just know to kind of see the vulnerability aspect of writing is, some things you might share something from the deep, dark secrets of your heart. And you also might share that that you put salt on your ice cream cones or whatever. I mean, just something that's quirky. So again, find vulnerability, share something about yourself that is not just the total good side you want people to see about yourself. Okay. So vulnerability is number one. V. A, action. So as we write narratively, the fuel for your story is action. And there's two types of action. There's action, physical action, moving through the world, and there's internal action. And the other way to think about that, you also see the word conflict. And so, action and conflict are kind of two sides of the same coin, but I'll use the word action today. So action, in telling a story, you want to have plenty of physical reality action. We want to see you overcoming things, overcoming obstacles, working your way through the world. So, sometimes we get trapped in our heads as people and writers, and that's, that kind of heady information can be useful in your writing, but really you want to be driving us through the world, meeting people, overcoming whatever's in your way. And that's action. Okay. That's external action. Internal action is sort of the things that happen in our minds that also are sometimes even triggered by the physical world. So as we move through the world, fear might come up, anger might come up. We might have, internal blocks that sort of that keep us from getting what we want. Another way to think of this internal action is, I use the word craving. It's sort of like what you're wanting to do. Where do you want to go? What do you want to get to? What do you want to bring into your life? So as you're telling a story, you're moving through the physical world. You want to occasionally check us in what's happening internally. Is fear coming up? Is anger coming up? If you have to go over some mountains on your external journey, are you suddenly, afraid of heights? Sometimes there's parts of our personality that, all of us have, kind of unconscious parts of us that kind of can hold us back. And the more you can kind of bring those, look at those unconscious things, maybe you don't think you have that much fear, but you realize you get in a new situation and there's something holding you back, and you look closer and you realize that there's some unconscious fear happening. So anyway, think of action in two forms, external and internal. And think of that internal part as sort of craving, what are you trying to get next to, but also look at how the things that are part of your personality might be blocking you. And just, and when you write about that stuff, you simply, as you move through the world, you just have a quick internal check-in. How am I feeling? What's the emotional valence of what's going on for me right now? So that's V is vulnerability, A is action. S is suspense. So in suspense, I think of, I use the other term, page turnability. What you're trying to do, one of the things you're trying to do as a writer is get the reader to the end. Your storytelling, if people bail on you after a few pages, they're not going to get your ideas, they're not going to get your lessons learned, and you're not going to get your wonderful story. So there's something that writers need to be conscious of is getting readers to the end. And we do that in many ways. Obviously, being vulnerable is one way we do it. But the key part about suspense is I said page turnability, getting people to the other side of to the next page. And how do you do that? Well, a key way you do that is by giving the reader information on a need to know basis. So rather than like spilling the beans early on about or hinting too much about the ending, it gives them too much of a sense of, gosh, I don't even need to finish this because he just kind of told me where he's going. You kind of, it's kind of concealing is not really quite the right word, but you're sort of seeding the story with just the facts they need to have them make sense of what's going on right now. So if I'm going on a big hike, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make it to the top of the mountain I'm going to go to, I would simply, the main facts I would give them would never really assure them that you're going to get to the top. First day, I just did this, and I was looking forward to the second day. That's not to say you wouldn't foreshadow. Foreshadowing is an important strategy in writing. There's ways to kind of hint, you can leave a little bit of a cliffhanger. At the end of day one, I was feeling tired. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I had a lot of energy and a lot of ambition. I was going to try to get up there. There's ways to kind of seed the story to make sure the reader is looking forward and is going to keep following you, but you do not want to spill the beans and make them feel assured of the outcome, both emotionally and physically. You don't want to give them the over feeling of the relief you might have at the end of the journey either. So it's something we can unpack in the later dates. So that's A, or just S for suspense. T is transformation. And so another way to think of transformation is the word like movement, meaning there needs to be some movement or transformation between the person you are, and if you're talking about fiction in a third person character, this works for as well. But basically, movement or transformation, you've got to be a different person at the end of the story than at the beginning of the story, and that can be in a subtle way. I'm not looking for I was utterly reinvented by this journey, or I was totally changed in a way. Sometimes people write like that, but it's also the believability of that. We're all we all stay the same, and we all grow and improve. And a story usually has some sense of like, I pushed myself and I got to the other side of this, and I experienced growth. I'm a slightly different person today, and I do have some of the same foibles that I still had when I left. So in the transformation, there's always kind of a mixed quality to it of, yes, having grown through the experience of what I've been through or your character's been through, and kind of an acceptance that, this life is what it is and it's hard, and you certainly will make more mistakes going forward. So transformation, be reasonable about it. And also, you can also examine the many types of transformation. Maybe you were transformed physically. Maybe you grew new muscles. Maybe you were transformed emotionally in that you got over some fears that you never thought you would get over. And like I said, that can be kind of tempered with, and gosh, I realized that I was driving home and flipped the bird to somebody. That anger is still part of me. I didn't lose all that. So just know that transformation has a nice mixed quality. So that's the vast technique for narrative writing. So, if you are vulnerable as a character, as a narrator, or if your character, third person character, is vulnerable, if you have action, it fuels the story, both internal action as well as external action. S, suspense, you seed the story so that you bring people along slowly and you don't spill the beans. And T, that transformation, by the end, there's some movement, there's some change you've gone through, and you can identify that and talk about it. That's my secrets to sharing, to writing a strong story. And finally, I'll end on one way that I use that. I mean, it can be a lot to keep conscious of all of this stuff as you're writing, and you want to be in a creative space as you're telling a story with writing. But so how I use it is I'll start to write a scene, for example, or start to write a story. And once I get a couple pages in, I'll just pause and I'll run myself through the vast technique. And, have I shared in these first 2 pages some vulnerability? I'll go back and adjust. Maybe I'll add a sentence or two to share a little bit more vulnerably about where I was in my life at the time from a real honest place. Is there enough action? People really connect with physical action. Am I too much in my head in the story, or is the reader following me on a physical journey or wherever I'm doing in the story? Likewise, internally with the emotional part. S, suspense. Have I dashed anyone's suspense here? Life is a mystery. Every story is a mystery. Have I seeded the story and kept it vague enough so that they don't have a sense of relief yet? And then T, you don't really understand T till you get to the end, but am I presenting the opportunities for the reader to see my transformation as I go through my storytelling? So that's the vast technique. And